What are Divine Shenhe's biggest pros and cons? That's what I'm here to tell you today. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. The most obvious positive quality that Shenhe offers to the table is her ability to buff Cryo characters up to the high celestial heavens. What she offers to Cryo teams is gnarly, dude. Let's have a look, why don't we? If we take a look within her kit, there's multiple benefits that she's able to offer to Cryo teams. Her skill, whether you press or hold it, will buff your character's cryo damage by adding flat damage on top of the regular cryo damage they already deal. As you can see, one half has no Icy Quills buffing going on, whereas the other side does. Something that's interesting to note is that the amount of flat damage that Shenhe's Icy Quills provide don't only scale off of her own attack. Yes, her own attack is absolutely a huge part of how much her skill buffs your cryo DPS. However, because it's a flat damage buff, all qualities pertaining to flat damage apply here. Flat damage scales on every type of buff except attack buffs. To clarify further, the flat damage buff will scale on the stats of whoever is using the stats. If Ayaka uses a Shenhe stack, then the flat damage buff will scale on Ayaka's damage percent, Ayaka's crit damage, you get the point. The only attack that matters here is Shenhe's attack. Her attack getting buffed does affect the Icy Quills flat damage buff. However, if Ayaka's attack gets buffed, that doesn't affect the Icy Quills. So the more non-attack buffs that you have in your team for your main DPS, the stronger that your Shenhe's flat damage buff will be. As an example, say that you have 4VV, Kazuha's damage bonus, and Shenhe's own Cryo Red Shred active in your team all at once. Shenhe's Icy Quills will buff your DPS more when those are all active. It's a super unique type of cryo buffing that works the same way as Yunjin's buff or Clorox Bleach's A1. There's differences between pressing and holding her skill too. These differences are mostly outlined in her A4 passive. When you hold it, all your normal, charged, and plunging attacks get their damage increased by 15% for 15 seconds. It has a trigger count of 7, so after 7 ticks of flat damage, the buff ends. Her press will buff the damage that your DPS's skill and burst does by 15% instead. So, hold is for Ganya and Riesli, while press is for Ayaka. That's not even mentioning her elemental burst, which decreases the cryo and physical res of any enemies that step foot within it, with a bit of DOT that can help apply extra element to proc more freezes or melts. The fun just doesn't end either, since if your main DPS stands inside of the burst circular field, that's an extra 15% cryo damage bonus. That's all within her kit. We haven't even talked about the external factors which make her shine. For example, a common mistake I see is people using 2-piece attack percent and 2-piece attack percent to try and maximize their Shenhe's attack stat. Well, my friend, might I introduce you to using 4-piece noblesse instead? Assuming that you haven't already got a user of that set in the team, it's actually higher team-wide damage if you sacrifice some of her own attack to use 4-piece noblesse. This is especially relevant for freeze teams where attack percent stats are super high value due to the lack of a Bennett. So that way you can yield even more buffing out of your Divine Damsel of Devastation. You can super effectively run Favonius Lance on your Shenhe too, which allows you to add more team-wide white energy particles to your comp. Or if you're an ultimate Shenhe simp, then you can even consider her own signature weapon. That's a stupidly high amount of base attack, not to mention the gargantuan amount of attack percent in that weapon passive. Needless to say that Shenhe is the cryo buffer. If you're looking for a unit that has a stupidly high amount of buffing for this specific elemental archetype, then her intense flat damage buffs paired with all of the other goodies that she offers is sure to turn your cryo roster into something fearsome. Yes, indeed, she is for sure one of the finest premium buffers for her element. However, there's one character in particular that I'd really like to shine a spotlight on, because Shenhe remains as one of her undeniable, finest high-cost options to this day. That's right, I'm talking about none other than Kamisato Ayaka. If you're a 100% dedicated Ayaka main, then saying that Shenhe is a good pull for you would be underselling things by quite a bit. Good? No! She's an excellent pull for your account in such a case. The only competition for Ayaka's most famous high investment team would be the Lady Farina Charlotte combo. If it's a constellated Farina that we're talking about here, then our sweet, beloved Hydro Archon does indeed take the cake. Otherwise, Shenhe will be an Ayaka main's best friend. Her buffing is able to make the first couple of Ayaka burst ticks hit like a nuclear blast, and because she's already super front-loaded by nature, Shenhe's Icy Quills suit Ayaka's playstyle perfectly, especially because you can swap off of her after using the ginormous burst to refresh your Icy Quills on Shenhe after reaching the trigger count on them. That's not even mentioning Shenhe's ability to comfortably battery your Ayaka, especially if she's holding a Favonius Lance. It's a perfect synergy. It really feels like Hoyo made Shenhe for her, which checks out, considering that she released during a time where this Kamisato princess was considered one of the best characters in the game. Ah yes, the good old days. I won't pretend like Shenhe's the only option here. The Farina Charlotte choice is really good too, but if you really love Ayaka, then the Divine Damsel is 100% a good pull of choice. Besides, the release of Shilonen has made a team of Ayaka, Farina, Shenhe, DJ Cat viable. Since there's healing now, you miss out on Kazuha's grouping and his burst additional elemental application, but the importance of losing that is gonna matter more depending on the situation. Generally speaking, just using the DJ Cat here will be a net positive because you get the literal best of both worlds. The Divine Damsel is quite the splendid choice if you're somebody interested in high investment cryo teams too. I'm mostly pointing fingers at mono cryo here, aka a team of Ayaka, Ganyu, Shenhe, and Shilonen or Kazuha. Fun note, the DJ Cat was technically a buff to mono cryo teams because she's also able to heal. There was no comfortable form of healing in those teams before, but the Geocat is here to save a day as always. Anyways, back to our Divine Damsel. If you're looking to play really high-end cryo teams of heavy constellation investment, then Shenhe will aid you wonderfully in your goals. I will say that you should focus on the following points of investment first. Ayaka C2R1, or even C4R1 if you want to go that far, as many of Furina's constellations as you want to get, Rio Beastly C1R1, and Ganyu C1. Those would generally be the best ones to aim for first if you want to become a high investment cryo enjoyer. Shenhe will then be a splendid team-specific premium choice that will buff the quality of your whaled out team up to the next level. I would go as far as C2R1 on her. C1 will allow you to have Shenhe's buff up for half of Ayaka's burst ticks, and C2, while being quite underwhelming for a C2 these days, is a neat little extra boost to your team's cryo damage. The extension of her burst's duration by 6 seconds is actually where the real meat of his constellation is at. Neat. This beautiful Divine Damsel happens to be the catalyst to some very unique synergies too. For example, Shenhe hold skill in a Chaska team is a super fun time. She can buff her cryo charged attack while being a fun way to introduce Melt or Freeze into Chaska teams. This is definitely a unique synergy which holds up pretty nicely in the current Genshin era. Playing a team of Chaska, Bennett, Furina, Shenhe makes for quite the strong comp. Plus, if you're a big fan of nonsensical meme teams, then this Divine Lady's got you covered there too. By using a character of Chongyun, you can cryo-infuse their normal attacks to turn them into a cryo main DPS. Shoot, you can even choose Shenhe herself as the on-fielder. This goofy interaction is what caused the birth of some forbidden ideas such as Cryo Zhongli. Obviously none of that is meta, but it's still something funny that will work if you wanted to. We have praised the Divine Damsel to celestial heights. Now we must bring her back down to Tevat and discuss her flaws. One of those being that she's super easily replaceable in teams these days. The Rio Beastly's best installed team consists of Bennett, Shangling, and Lady Furina. No Shenhe to be found here. They definitely work together in plenty of teams, but she's far from a must. Ganyu's melt teams typically survive pretty much just fine without Shenhe. For example, any burn melt team of hers will pretty much never feature her sister. Even traditional Ganyu melt doesn't utilize her, so she's not even a must for the character who was raised by the same chicken as her. Shenhe can also steal melts in your Ganyu teams, which is pretty dang irritating. For the longest time, you could definitively say that Shenhe was an excellent must-pull for Ayaka, and while that's still definitely true to an extent, the Furina-Charlotte duo exists these days. So to say that she's the only option would be wrong. Even in Chaska teams, you'll do just fine by slapping an Orderon on 4-piece Intercity in Shenhe's place and calling it a day. There's no team where she's 100% a must-pull. Well, there is one. That would be Mono Cryo, but that's pretty much it. Mono Cryo is super satisfying to play when you've got all of its main puzzle pieces, sure, but honestly, pour that same level of investment into any more modern team archetype instead, and you'll be clearing like 2 to 3 times faster. There are also some limitations of Shenhe's Icy Quills down at C0. C1 resolves this, so essentially selling the solution. Don't you just love to see it? Anyways, because of the trigger count on the flat damage buff, Ayaka's entire burst isn't going to be buffed by Shenhe's tap skill. You'd want to be able to tap again during Ayaka's burst, which only becomes possible at C1. Even then, that's only 10 procs of Shenhe's skill, and Ayaka's burst ticks 20 times. Not a major turnoff or anything, since at the end of the day you're still buffing her huge initial ticks. Even so, it's a bit irritating. Another negative mark on Shenhe's resume is the fact that Cryo's in a really poor state right now. Lolly's the first actually good character of the element that we'll have gotten in ages. Quite literally, because Hoyo hasn't made another limited 5-star Cryo character ever since Riesli. That guy's pretty decent, but he's also the same guy who doesn't use Shenhe in his best installed teams. You're much more likely to use her with the 2 old Cryo DPSs, because those are who she was made for. She's pretty much tied to these characters, more so Ayaka in truthfulness. Most of us would agree when I say that the element's not in a very good state right now, and because this character's entire gimmick is being a dedicated cryo buffer, that means that she too is not exactly in the best state at the moment. When the element is good, so is she. When it's bad, so is she. It's as simple as that. However, I don't really want to vouch for Shenhe potentially becoming good in the future. I think she'll always be stuck as somewhat of a relic of the past. She'll remain as being a good team option for the older Cryo units, but I seriously doubt that Hoyo is going to tie future units of the element to a buffer that's on the Chronicled Wish. They're much more likely to create a new 4-star buffer which is specifically tied to that brand new unit, or to balance the character around more versatile pre-existing buffers. So in my opinion, it's not worth picking up Shenhe in the hopes that she'll eventually become good. If you aren't happy with her state as is, I doubt that it'll be improving massively anytime anytime soon. In fairness, I do expect her to at the very least synergize with future Cryo DPSs. After all, Shenhe still works with Rio Beastly, even if it's not his most ideal setup, but I doubt that she'll be best in slot for anybody that's upcoming. Even if she's fallen off of the meta, she'll never fall off in my heart. I love this character dearly, and I still have super fond memories of her release. She came out during Genshin 2.4, which to this day is still my favorite Genshin patch of all time. No other Genshin patch has ever beaten 2.4 for me, man. She's certainly no must-pull, and she's one of the nichest units among the niche. However, if you have a specific goal in mind as to how you want to use her, then she will attain that goal for you wonderfully. Definitely let me know about what you think about her down below in the comments. Are you pulling for her now that she's finally back after so long, or are you gonna give her a pass? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Friendly reminder that I have a ZZZ second channel. You can expect to see some fun, silly ZZ content over on that channel. Go head on over and subscribe if you're interested. Hopefully this video was able to tell you Shenhe's biggest pros and cons. This has been Juice, signing out, and never let any of this distract you from the fact that Riesli has somehow still not gotten a single freaking rerun yet.